Another idea that there are opportunities to incorporate exhibits in public spaces. So the art doesn't have to be confined to the interior of a gallery, but really starts to reach out to terraces, to entry foyers, to to the accessible sculpture garden outside the building, and really starts to reach out and think about art in a dispersed way, in a way that has a broader influence on public space. Another trend in galleries is to be very, very specific to the exhibit criteria of the collection. The image on the upper left being a temporary exhibition gallery with lots of neutrality to it. On the upper right, an American collection where, even though we're in a 21st century building, simple gestures like ceiling coffers and ley light systems and the addition of some millwork, etc., start to relate to the period aspect of the collection. And lastly, at the more contemporary edge, this lower right image is an installation of Judith Lieber handbags that we designed and had fully computer fabricated in Los Angeles from a 3D file, no drawings, simply a robot making parts and welding them together, and then shipped this whole exhibit ensemble to Virginia for this display. Likewise, there's a real focus on new media and non-traditional collections driving the design of galleries, and particularly in this instance, technologically enhanced galleries. Galleries that are more accepting of dark ceilings and electrical and data distribution through the ceiling and all these things that allow these kinds of new media shows to occur efficiently for curatorial staff. There's also a trend to locate formerly remote program functions such as cafes, which used to be relatively private and on the third floor above the galleries, bringing those down to street level, bringing them so that they're highly visible from the lobby, but also with a separate door so they can do after hours service to the urban customer, perhaps, even after security within the museum shuts down. Same story for museum stores. One of the trendsetters in this was SF MoMA in San Francisco. The idea that the museum store has glass right on the sidewalk, you draw your visitors in for merchandising, etc., and that all these things are more about building that sense of engagement. So I think the next topic to mention is the museum's role as an architectural destination, sometimes referred to as the Bilbao effect, catalyst for cultural tourism. But I think what we've realized in the last 5 years is that there's about a 3-year bell curve on that phenomenon, and that people will visit for the architecture once. After that, they're unlikely to visit just for the architecture, but they are likely to visit again and again if the brand that the architecture establishes is in harmony with the aggressive exhibit program, the academic and intellectual activities of art within the institution, and of course what the museum does for education and outreach. So when those are in harmony, they work together. And of course there's a wide range of what that iconic quality can be. On the left, the extraordinarily exuberant pavilion by Calatrava at Milwaukee, and on the right, the extremely simple and minimalist Stephen Hall Architects at the addition at the Nelson Atkins. There's another trend which I think is revisiting something that was prevalent in the perhaps 60s and 70s, is this idea of interdisciplinary synergy. And we're seeing this more on university campuses where a single operation source is responsible for performing arts and visual arts and student life. And so the American University, which opened 2 years ago, certainly is an example of shared lobby space, shared auditorium, etc., for a wide variety of arts. Another trend that I think is just emerging, and I don't even have built work to show yet in this instance, but this is a competition we entered for the Michigan State University New Broad Museum. And you can see the diagram at the top. It was very important to the university to say that the museum needs to serve its role as between the campus and the life of the city. And in this case, they chose a site that's right on the main drag, if you will, with all the shops and restaurants and cafes and retail in East Lansing. And you can see that we chose here to raise the galleries a floor above the ground plane and let the building become visually and physically permeable so that the city and campus are both visually and physically linked. And there's yet another important trend, which is the idea of sustainability, the idea of being a good neighbor, and in this instance, as is here at the Adams Center design, one of melding into the landscape, taking on the characteristics of the immediate landscape environment, and being a neighbor that's well received. And so this is my last slide, and with that I look forward to the things that Judy will have to say tonight to further enlighten me about the Adams Center. But I do see that within this as one of the variety of trends in the way that museums are and galleries are fulfilling this role of both fine art as inhabitable sculpture, and important community life. Thank you.
We'll look at art later, but I have to wear more than one hat because it's important for me to speak to what I see as an important phenomenon and potential goal for the future of museums. And my example comes from a collection, and it's the vision of the person who built that collection, who has had such a profound impact on the ideas I will share with you briefly this afternoon. By the way, good afternoon. Good afternoon. I have been privileged for the last 20 years, I started as a baby, to work with a private collection that was pulled together by someone who had an incredible vision and who was on a mission from day one. And that mission was to amass as many works as possible by African Americans. And he was compelled to do so because in 1960, when he started the Paul R. Jones collection, he went to over 20 museums across the United States. And at that time, none of those museums, and these were prominent museums, had African American representation in their permanent collections. And he became a man with a mission. And that mission was to first collect and then comprise a way in which that collection could impact not only audiences' perceptions of what the creativity of African Americans was like, but to also use that art as a bridge to break down barriers that crossed a number of diverse concern issues.